Hi there, I'm Malcolm Graham Wood, and today I'm at Core London doing my CEO interview. My guest today is Leslie Peterkin, the CEO Advanced Energy. Good afternoon and welcome, Leslie. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good afternoon and welcome to you too, Malky. I've heard an awful lot about you in the last 12 months, so we've been waiting for this opportunity.
Well, in the last 12 months, I've heard a lot about Advanced, which I didn't know before, so I'm absolutely delighted to have you in the hot seat today. As I say, given that it is a fairly new play to quite a lot of people in the marketplace. You're obviously drilling a transformative well offshore Timor-Leste, but before we talk about that in some detail, perhaps you can give us an introduction to the company and the strategy that you've started off with.
Yeah, well, look, it seems almost a long time ago now. We're coming up to our second anniversary, which seems remarkable. But this started as an idea that I had a long time ago that I wanted to start my own oil and gas company. Had a number of attempts, didn't work, had ideas, but couldn't get money. And had a handful of opportunities back in 2019. And I connected with Mark Rowlands, and after a period of time managed to convince him in 2020 to finally come on board with setting up the company. So we were three founders to begin with, and it took us the best part of 6 months to get hold of the company that was at that time Andalus and take it over. And we brought, as I had indicated at the beginning there, about a handful of opportunities that I had identified with another colleague who was one of the original founders that we brought into the company. And one of those was Buffalo, which curiously enough, I actually started evaluating in January 2019. So it's a 3-year journey from that to here we are now, just drilling the well.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much for that. So, it's been a busy year. You've started drilling, you've got financing and so on. Let's talk about the agreement that you made to begin with to actually get into Buffalo and what made you do it? What was so exciting?
What was so exciting? Well, a little bit of background probably helpful in the sense that I worked in Perth, West Australia for 10 years before I came to Geneva, where I live now. And so I know that area, which is essentially the coast off the north coast of Australia into East Timor rather well. In fact, I worked in quite a number of those fields, oil fields, and the Bayu-Undan gas stroke LNG field as well at that time. So I know the reservoir well, I know the area well. And we started looking at the opportunity when Carnarvon decided to farm it out in late 2018, and that's how I got the data, or started to get the data in early 2019. And it doesn't take too long, although I didn't know much about that particular field. The reservoir is very well known and it's extremely prolific. And once I got the data, it became clear, just doing some basic economics, that if the 34 million barrels that have been certified as likely to be discovered, probably not use the word discovered, proved with our well that we're drilling right now, then the economics are stellar. They're extremely attractive because the field, when it first came on production, produced a peak rate of 45,000 barrels a day from 2 wells. And we would expect, of course, exactly the same performance again. So you get the bottom line of it is you get 34 million barrels over about 5 years, and most of it arises in the first 2 years. So you have extremely fast return on your investment.
Good, and you raised $30 million.
Yeah.
To get this all underway. Did that go easy enough? I mean, probably not so easy under the circumstances you were raising it, actually.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, we started the company in February 2020, and obviously it wasn't the best time, or you might not think so anyway. And then, of course, we were raising the money almost exactly a year later in order to do the Buffalo deal, which we closed with Carnarvon in late 2020. However, look, I was a bit new to this whole thing, so I would say it was quite a challenge, and especially the fact that we had to do the RTO. It was a lot of work. But the actual raising of the funds didn't seem to go that difficult with great difficulty.
Yeah.
We had a lot of interviews. We seemed to get a lot of interest, and I think we got the message across about the prolific nature of the asset. Notwithstanding that it's not it's not a 100 million barrels or 150 million barrel field. It's a small field, but it nevertheless produces a massive return in a very short time frame. And I think that message gelled with people.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can go through in a bit more detail about the field and so on, and of course the well, which has been drilling for just since New Year's Eve or whatever it was. I fully understand that you can't tell us much about what's going on with the well at the moment, but anything more that you can give us in terms of, I mean, I've had this well described to me as an appraisal well, a development well, and an exploration well all in one. And I'm bound to be wrong somewhere, but anything you can sort of, you obviously already given me some good numbers, but some further thoughts or not?
Yeah. Well, first of all, maybe you did ask me about strategy. Maybe I should just, I kind of glossed over that at the beginning. Our strategy is no exploration. Our strategy is about existing resources that have been overlooked and optimizing, maximizing the recovery from these, from such assets. And Buffalo, you could argue, given it was 20 years since it was first produced, developed, is a somewhat overlooked asset. It was only relicensed by Carnarvon in 2016. So the key thing about the asset is that we have an area in the field, trying to make it as simple as possible, that was never developed. And we call it the attic, the crest, the highest point in the field. If you think of a dome, they produced around the edges of the dome, not on the top of the dome. And so we're drilling this well, which is very much an appraisal well. It's not exploration at all, in order to prove the case for the crest, the attic, that has been known to not have been developed as far back as 20 years ago when BHP and Nexum were on the field. It was understood that there was an attic. They had difficulty at that time with the seismic quality and the interpretation capability to define it, to be sure it was there. And they ran out of time with the FPSO that was coming to end of contract, and there was no energy, I think, in the group at that time to then spend some more funds to try and see if they could prolong it.
It's obviously very encouraging for how you're going on, and so the chance of success being an appraisal well will be very high, and the geological risk quite low. I think that that's what appealed to people when they saw it, with the opportunity to put some money into something which would then give them, the upside of a decent well, without too much of the downside of an all-in-one. Although I have to say that I've put it into the higher risk section of the bucket list when it opened up the other day, but don't take any offense about that.
I don't take any offense about that. The risk has provided, as part of the RTO, they provided a CPR for us that was used as part of the whole exercise. And in there, anybody who can go and find it on our website, it states quite categorically, their statement, not ours, that there's an 86% chance that a development will arise from the drilling of this well. And
well, that's good enough. That's good enough for me.
There's not many opportunities that come into that kind of zone.
So tell me, we can be fairly hypothetical here, if we may, Leslie, because I'm trying to keep it sort of straightforward so we don't get a smack on the wrist by the policeman down in the corner there. Yeah. What are the various scenarios that you would take up from whatever results you pick up? You full speed ahead for a development and producing as much as possible. What's the form?
Look, I mean, as I keep telling my team, as we get closer and closer to the target, they get more and more anxious at times. I take a different view. We always plan for success. So at the moment, we wait to see what we get, and we plan for success. I mean, I can't say anything relevant because there isn't really very much relevant that we know in the well at the moment. We're well into the 12¼ section, which will be cased off with 9 5/8 casing, and then we'll go into the reservoir section. But to date, all of we check the levels, the geological levels that we're going through as we drill the well, and all of those are on prognosis at the moment. That's as much as I can say, and that's just a fact. You can interpret it any way one wants. So in terms of scenarios going forward, we plan for success. If we find that we have established the 34 million barrels of gross reserves to be developed, then we will look at taking the well data, integrating it with the existing database, defining exactly what the shape of the reservoir is now that we've drilled this well, reevaluate the oil in place that's available for development, define the development plan. There is a development plan already in draft. It's very comprehensive. It won't take us long to update that. And then we move to the process of recertification to reserves, and then ultimately an FID decision somewhere in the middle of the year.
So that's the interesting thing. I mean, does the well get suspended as a potential producer, or do you will you be doing something completely different in terms of production if once the FID? So FID middle of this year, and then
somewhere in the middle of this year. I mean, with quite a bit of grayness around that.
Yeah,
what we actually find. In terms of the well itself, we've spent a lot of money getting there, drilling it. We're definitely going to keep it. So the idea is to suspend it, and it will be used to be re-entered as a development.
And if it was a development, and obviously you can't really, I guess you can't tell me because we're on the size front, how many wells are you expecting to use to produce from?
Almost certainly we'll go for a 3-well scenario on the 34 million barrel case. So we've got this particular well that we're drilling, which is essentially in the center of the field, or at least that's what we believe. And then we'll probably go left and right in terms of accessing the remaining reserves that this well can't produce itself. Yeah, so 3 wells is what we would expect.
Now tell me, are you funded for 3 wells depending on success, or put it that way? The next question was about funding. So interested to know where you are, how much of the 30 million you spent, what you've got left, what the balance sheet looks like, what the burn is. Run a few of those things that the CFO will have been keeping his tabs on you for a while. What does he tell you?
Well, look, we're traveling, as far as we're concerned, we're traveling in a way that we can manage things going forward in the immediate time frame. But in terms of going forward after we've got the results from the well, I said, we would do a CPR, we would define the reserves. At that point, we will start to re-engage with the numerous people we've already connected with around funding of this development. And we've got a lot of interest, particularly in the Far East. It's very interesting. They love this oil. And one of my other interviews recently, somebody asked me about the oil, and I said, well, it's the champagne of oil. And it's not a blasé statement. I mean, a lot of people think that oil is black and it drips off barrels, as you often see in the newspapers and so on. This is the color of water. It's almost clear. It's almost like condensate. It's very high value. It does trade at a premium when it was previously being produced at a premium to Brent of about $2 a barrel. And great interest in the region in getting hold of this volume of oil, despite the fact that it's a relatively small volume. We have a lot of people who are interested. So we don't see any difficulty getting funding for the project.
And so you'd be selling the oil locally at a premium, and that's never going to be a problem.
No,
where you are.
No, definitely not.
So you're funded through to that position, whatever happens, I guess.
Yeah, we will have to go out and get funding for the development. Obviously, we have to wait to find out what we've got, what it will support. There's certainly, I wouldn't say a queue at the moment, but I think once we've got the result, there could be a queue.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me, we mentioned that you'd raised the money, and we've talked about why be an Advanced Energy shareholder, which makes it sound very exciting. So who are the shareholders on the list? And management, the retail, the institutions? Where did you place the stock?
When we started the company up, we tried to connect with quite our own network to some of the institutions, but we were just a bit too early in the piece for that particular group of individuals or parties. So we're primarily retail and high net worth individuals at the moment, but we would look upon success in expanding that and broadening that shareholder base.
And you see, obviously you're quoted in London, but do you see, internationally? I mean, just because you're near Australia, there's no quote in Australia. You think that the shareholders in London will be where you continue to persevere?
I think so, but it's not an area that I have a lot of knowledge of. I'll be honest about that, but I would like to think that we can broaden it beyond London, but I think it's always going to be the case that London is going to be the key source.
I would have thought so. I mean, I'm not suggesting just because you found oil near Australia you'll get a quote there. That just doesn't work at all. But I get the impression from talking to people about the company that you've got a lot of people interested in all around the world at the moment. So I think that's very exciting.
Yeah, well, we've also got a very broad view in terms of future assets, and I'm sure you're going to ask me a question about future opportunities. But
it's the next question.
Right. So I think possibly some of that interest comes from the fact that we're talking to a lot of people in lots of different places in the world. Yeah.
So the next question is, where do you go to from here? Is it just Buffalo, or are you looking at other things? What are the plans?
Yeah, what are the plans? Look, as I said right at the very outset, we brought into the company half a dozen or so opportunities that we wanted to pursue. One or two of those have fallen by the wayside, as they do. That doesn't mean they weren't good opportunities. They just didn't work out in the end for whatever reason. Usually it's something commercial or aspects about the joint venture. I mean, again, one of the key strategy points for the company is we look to be a non-operator. We keep ourselves very small, very tight in terms of G&A costs. And we also want to try and focus on being in joint ventures that only have two parties, so that we can have very good relationship with the operator. And I don't want to use the controlling word. Our whole objective is to have a constructive dialogue with our operators in order to optimize the value of these assets that we get involved in. And we're looking at a number of different opportunities. We're looking at some production, but it's always kind of got this flavor of a Buffalo lookalike about what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And they're still out there. People always say to me, how do you find these things? Well, it's just a question of experience, I think. To be honest,
they're all there.
They are still there. People say, how is it possible? But they are there. So
every time I get one every day, someone saying I found this, and sure enough, it's perfectly good and common sense and so on.
Yeah. So we have 3 or 4 things that we're looking at. I think we would say right now here today, there are 2 that we're pursuing very, very vigorously. Have good dialogues going on. But just like I said at the beginning, I first started looking at Buffalo in January 2019. One has to be patient in this business. It takes time to get everybody in the same page.
Yeah. Tell me, before we finish, one of the things I liked a lot when I first looked at Advance was the makeup of your board. And I've spoken to obviously you and Steve and so on. But tell me, what you've put together a very experienced high-quality board. I think the people watching this would like to hear a bit about them, because I like the look of it a lot.
Well, I think what we wanted to do, first of all, I got introduced to Mark via as it goes, and it took me over a year to persuade him to should join me and do this this exercise with Advance. And I targeted him a little bit because he has a somewhat similar background to myself. He started with Shell. He started as a petroleum engineer, and he then moved into a more commercial kind of zone. And so he is very strong on a commercial side, and he also had some very good contacts in London in terms of financing and possibly elsewhere as well, which is what one of the things I was really lacking, that connection. I've tended to be always in the zone of working for people and optimizing their assets, but not necessarily on the commercial or the funding side of the equation. Once we got started, we wanted to expand the board. First of all, we needed a CFO, and we got a very strong recommendation for Stephen West, who's our CFO. He's actually a West Australian, but he lives in London, has been in London for a long time. He's got a lot of experience in the market in terms of raising money and managing, the stockbrokers and that we interface with. And he was, obviously very material in helping us raise the money back a year ago. So he was the first addition. And then once we got the Buffalo deal, we wanted to expand the board again, give it a bit more breadth. We particularly wanted to get some G&G experience. We're not explorationists, but we wanted to have solid G&G because in the end, this is all about subsurface. Everything in E&P comes down in the origins in the subsurface. If you can't understand that and manage that, succeed. So we wanted a very strong situation there, but also another element of development. I've done a lot of development. In fact, my whole career has basically been involved in development. And we wanted somebody as well who had some development. So we got Larry Bottomley, who is very much solid G&G. He has a strong exploration background, which we're not using, but it's because we don't explore. But he's very, very solid and strong on the G&G side, and that's very important. And then we have Stephen White, who actually started as a geologist with Shell, but very quickly moved into managing developments. So he has a very strong aspect of development, similar to myself. So we've got a lot of commercial, we've got development, we've got G&G, and all of this gets in the mix when we're talking about some of these opportunities that we're looking at. And that's the mix you need to make the right decisions and the right deals. Yeah. Well, it hasn't gone unnoticed. I think that's very good. We're nearly looking at the clock. We're nearly time's up, I'm afraid, Leslie, but I really appreciate your time today. I wonder if before we leave altogether, you could give me what I always ask people, a sort of a wrap up, where you'd like to see Advanced Energy in 12 to 18 months' time. Well, 12 to 18 months? 18 months, yeah, 12 to 18 months. Well, in 18 months, I would say we would be getting close to finalizing the development of Buffalo at that time. That's to say, we anticipate that FID will happen roughly mid-year. That's a very rough, it can go either side of that. And then we have 18 months from FID to first oil. So basically 18 months plus 2 years from today, we expect to have, production from Buffalo. It takes time. But in the interim, we would expect to have already secured certainly 2, maybe 3 different new assets, and one of those we would definitely be wanting to look to have some production for cash flow. Excellent. Well, I really appreciate your time this afternoon, Leslie. I'm most grateful for that, and thank you very much indeed for joining me today. Nice to meet you, and we look forward to having further conversations in the future. I look forward to it. I have to thank you very much for putting us on your bucket list. That's my pleasure. My risk. I look forward to it. I'm Malcolm Graham Wood, and I've enjoyed this afternoon being at Core London doing my CEO interview slots. Today, my guest has been Leslie Peterkin, the CEO of Advanced Energy. Thank you for joining us, Leslie, and thank you all for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Bye now.